Thank you, everyone. This is Darren Neffner on the Sococo Board of Directors. We think we got a critical mass, so we're going to kick it over to Contra Costa Supervisor John Joya to get us going.
Great. All right. Well, wasn't that great to have some networking time? It's, during the pandemic, it's really great to check in with other people. I know we're getting out to more events, but it's good to see all of you. So I'm John Joya, and I have the honor of representing the west part of Contra Costa County. For those of us out here, we call it the best part of Contra Costa County.
Easy now. Easy now.
On the Board of Supervisors, and I'm joined by my colleague, Supervisor Federal Glover, and both of us actually make up the Sustainability Committee of our Board of Supervisors. So with Jody London here, our Sustainability Coordinator, we can almost get some other business done. So, but I want to start by...
you won't tell anybody.
No, we don't tell anybody. I want to start by first really acknowledging all of you for being here and strong supporters of Sustainable Contra Costa. I think we're able to do so much here in this county because of the great grassroots leadership at all levels, from nonprofits. Of course, we have businesses that lead as well, and we're here about that, and individuals in government. So we have such great leadership and grassroots support in our county for sustainability. And let me just have my colleague, Supervisor Glover, say hi. He'll be joining me later to make presentations, but let me have Federal say hi.
Well, good evening. It's great to see so many faces that are here. I actually represent the East and the West, so I guess I have the better district. But
Federal and I argue about this all the time. Yes.
Yeah. So it really is an honor to be here and to be able to give out some great awards tonight. So I just want to thank everyone that is here today for attending, and especially those who are going to be the award recipients tonight for their outstanding work.
Thanks. And as I said, Federal and I are really, pleased to work on sustainability issues through our Sustainability Committee. And we get a lot of great ideas from the advocates around this county. And so we're looking forward to do a lot more exciting things. We're actually working now on an ordinance that requires full electrification of new homes as they're built in the unincorporated areas. And we heard from so many strong advocates, including, I'm sure, some of you. I know, Tina, you've talked about that. So we appreciate the great support that's at our board meeting for that. So I don't need to tell you that this event is always a really energizing, inspiring event, because we get to hear and see all the great work that's being done in our county. And we get to also support a great nonprofit that brings us together. So with that, I am going to turn it over to the great executive director of Sustainable Contra Costa. I know Tina has really, as one of the founders of Sustainable Contra Costa, has been a great leader and advocate. And I know how hard you work, not just on this event, Tina, but year round to really raise the visibility of sustainability issues. And I think you recognize how important it is to highlight the good work of volunteers and businesses and folks in government, because it's an inspiration to others, and it's a role model. So thanks for doing that. Tina.
Thank you, John. Oh, am I off mute? Good. This is really fun. I mean, it's always kind of nerve-wracking getting to this, but this was the very first event that we decided to do 14 years ago, when Bob Joe and Marcia Galanco and Sheila Hill and a few others of us started SCOCO. And it's very cool to know that this is our 13th event. And by the way, Supervisor Glover was at our very first event at the Gardens of Heather Farm. We have some very cool videos and photos back then, which was really neat. And we had over 220 people come. We thought there would be like 50 people. And anyway, so happy autumnal equinox, everybody. That's a mouthful, but that's today, coincidentally, which is kind of cool. Have y'all had a chance to enjoy the nice harvest moon this week? Pretty awesome. And thank you all for being here and for being a part of this community of really solutionaries, we like to say. who are working toward ecologically sustainable, economically vibrant, and socially just communities for all. There are 99 people here right now. I know we had something like 175, 200, but there were a few duplicates, people registered for tonight. And so
Okay.
exciting.
She said,
Our community, I'm going to read you something. Our community is like a tapestry and stronger because each and every one of us, as individual threads in the tapestry, being our authentic selves and embracing our unique gifts. When woven together, each unique thread lends to the beauty and potency of our tapestry, our community's story. Like the art of images on a tapestry, the vision that we're all creating together is being manifested through our different colored and textured threads. So that was something that my spiritual guide, Kristen, my yoga teacher, helped me write for this event. And I just thought it was a really cool way to sort of express the connection that we all have here and to our beyond us here and to everything in the universe, which I'm sure one of our I loved one of our award winners' little quotes that he has on his email about how everything is connected. So I believe that we're experiencing an era of a great awakening. We're more conscious of the struggles of those who have been wronged and the species and the earth that has been damaged. And we're getting to better at having brave conversations about things that matter. We've volunteered, we've helped our neighbors and found ways to connect with family and friends that we never imagined. Raise your hand if you've spent time with people on Zoom that you probably wouldn't have ever seen otherwise. I had dinner with my dad for his birthday, and they're up in Sequim, Washington, and that was really cool. Dinner on Zoom with my family. These connections and shared experiences, the good ones and the bad ones, give me hope because we're together, we are stronger together. Speaking of stronger together, I want to thank our partners and sponsors. Tyler, do you have some slides?
Yes, I do.
All right. So first of all, to our event partners, Central Contra Costa Sanitary District and the Contra Costa Green Business Program, and to Mount Diablo Resource Recovery, MCE, cities of Antioch, Pittsburgh, Martinez, Walnut Creek, Contra Costa County, Contra Costa Water District, East Bay Municipal Utility District, the Bay Club, City of Pleasant Hill, Eco Mulch, John Muir Health, Moraga Hardware and Lumber, Nick and Laura Newhasel, Recycle Smart, Renaissance Hotel, Republic Services, Swinnerton Builders, Town of Moraga, Tri-Delta Transit, Bill's Ace Hardware, Cali Craft Brewing, Captain Vineyards, Contra Costa Center Transit Village, KKDVFM, Mechanics Bank, Kim and Jerry Overaw, Sideboard, Neighborhood Kitchen and Coffee Bar, Viano Vineyards, Sunrise Bistro, West Twin Associates, Mount Diablo High School Hospitality and Tourism Academy, DVC Culinary Arts Department, and Diablo Foods, and all of these individual donors that you see here, as well as all of you who may donate or have donated tonight. So now I think it's time to turn it back to John.
Great, thanks, Tina. So what we're first going to do is start off with a brief talk and discussion with Dr. Andy Gunther, who is a scientist here in the Bay Area on the front lines of dealing with climate change. And I get to work with Andy in our roles on the San Francisco Bay Conservation and Development Commission. And I can tell you, he's a great advocate on issues around the Bay. And totally, it's great having a scientist in addition to a bunch of politicians on our board. Let me just say a few words about him. Dr. Gunther received his PhD in Energy and Resources from UC Berkeley, go Bears, and he's worked at the intersection of environmental science and policy since 1979. He served as the Assistant Chief Scientist for the Exxon Valdez Oil Spill Restoration Program, so a challenge. And he was the first manager of the state of California's program that monitors for toxic substances in San Francisco Bay. He's been working with a broad array of organizations to help prepare the San Francisco Bay Area for a changing climate. He was recently appointed by Governor Newsom to the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board. He serves on BCDC. He's also on the board of directors of the Union of Concerned Scientists. So, Andy, let's hear your wisdom.
Thanks, John. And I really want to thank all of you for the invitation to be with you guys tonight. Your commitment to a sustainable future and all of the actions that you've been taking both this year and for the past 14 years are exciting and inspiring to me. As you all know, and more people are recognizing, our climate is changing as scientists predicted decades ago due to the emission of greenhouse gases. And the problem is accelerating in severity. Most people don't realize that half of all human emissions of greenhouse gases have been released since 1980. And as these emissions stay in the atmosphere for a long time, we're committed to warming into the future. It's as though we've wrapped ourselves in a blanket that we can't take off. And that means today's climate is probably as benign as most of those alive today will ever see. Now, that's a sobering but true reality that we need to both live and plan by. Now, the planet's going to survive just fine. It's gone through major disruptions before. But human civilization has never gone through a climatic shift like the one we have generated. And so that's why it's so imperative that we transition away from fossil fuels and enhance all of the natural processes that pull carbon out of the atmosphere. But even with the most aggressive of transitions, adaptation to our new climate is going to be absolutely necessary. Hopefully, we can manage the unavoidable and avoid the unmanageable. And we need to recognize that the no action alternative is no longer the most conservative option. And I think sustainable Contra Costa is clearly helping us meet these goals. And that's why I'm so honored to be with you guys tonight. You're living that idea that no action is not acceptable. You can say through the Cleaner Contra Costa Challenge and through your other activities that you're really making a difference. I think if I got it right when I was talking to Tina, you're now at like 50,000 verified household actions. I mean, that is just spectacular. And you're also, the outreach that you're doing to youth is so essential because they are waking up to the fact that their future has been gravely affected by those who were supposed to be protecting them. This is a difficult situation for our generation, particularly for parents like me, and I assume many of you as well. I predict we're going to be facing ever increasing anger and fury from the younger generation, and we can be proactive with programs reaching out to youth. And as I understand it, that's one of the key things we're raising money for tonight. So please give generously. I plan to. You know, we all want a clean environment, a safe and healthy world for our kids. Even the stereotypical angry Fox News viewer wants that. And people are slowly getting the fact that this problem is not a hoax. It's not going to go away. It's going to get worse. One of the most important things that we can all do is to be confident and compassionate communicators about climate change. We have to talk about it. We cannot accept the status quo that it's something to avoid in polite company. So in that vein, I want you to remember 5 things. First, we've known about this problem for a long time. The planetary physics were understood in the 19th century. Every president since Lyndon Johnson has been warned about this. We still have agency, right? The climate we're going to get is the climate we choose. We just can't choose the climate we used to have. That's sad, but it doesn't mean we're done for at all. The biggest uncertainty in future projections is human emissions. The more we reduce them, the less severe the future impacts are going to be. And number 3, we know what we need to do. And we've started this transition and it's accelerating. Solar energy is now the cheapest form of electricity ever available to humanity. And these trends are going to continue. and Sustainable Contra Costa and your sister organizations are key to making this happen. Reducing our carbon footprints is necessary, but we need to recognize it's not sufficient. The barriers to building a sustainable future are political. They're not technical. We could end global warming in a generation if we truly made it a priority. So all of us need to speak out about these issues to our elected representatives and in our communities, and even to representatives like John Joya, who fully grasp the issues and are providing leadership. Let me just finish here with a story. The University of Delaware has a offshore wind center, and they did a study about 10 years ago. And they said, what if we put turbines throughout the eastern seaboard from Cape Hatteras to Cape Cod, all the way out to our 200-mile exclusive economic zone. But let's make sure you can't see any of the turbines from land, so there isn't a problem with people's views getting affected. How much electricity would that generate? Now, this was back when turbines were 1.5 to 2 megawatts in size. They're now 3 or 4 times that. And the answer was it would generate 1.5 times the electricity use on the entire eastern seaboard of the United States. Well, that's really exciting. Well, how many wind turbines is that? It's 169,000. And some people will say, oh, we can't do that. But you have to remember that in 1940, the United States built 3,600 aircraft, war aircraft. By 1945, we built 300,000. And it's just because we put our minds and our hearts into it. And that's what you guys are doing in your community, and you're modeling that for everybody. So I think you should be incredibly proud of the work you've done, and I hope you keep doing it. And I look forward to being part of it and hearing more about it in the future.
Andy, thanks for those words. And I want to emphasize something that Dr. Gunther said. The solutions to address climate change are there. It is about political will. And all of you have immense power in influencing that. The reason California provides such leadership in this country on this issue is because the people of California support it. They supported Assembly Bill 32, the first climate change structure for the state. They voted against the oil company's attempt to overturn AB 32. When the public stands up, elected officials will follow. I can tell you, for Federal Glover and I, and the work that we're doing on the Sustainability Committee, when you show up, when you advocate, it makes a difference. We need your support to make these policies happen. And that's why ultimately I'm optimistic and hopeful, because the public gets it. So it's not only your individual action in your own lives, but it's your action advocating to policymakers. If we followed what we know from science, we'd have half the problems we have today. Andy, right? If people followed, the research and recommendations from folks like Dr. Gunther, we wouldn't have the scope of problems we have. That's why it is about politics. And Andy, what's your sense of and I'll offer mine too, of how people can summarize science in an effective way? You get it, you understand it. People that are trying to convey that to policymakers, what are your thoughts about how would you suggest people look at that?
Well, I think that one of the things people have to do is not try and be a scientist if you aren't, right? So the climate is the envelope in which everything happens, all of our natural environment, all of human enterprise. And so when we change climate, we're going to change everything, and everyone is going to experience it. Whether you are a banker, or you are a construction worker, or you are a climate scientist, or you are an elected official. And understanding how it's going to affect you helps you speak about that. And I think when I speak about climate change, I know some of you have heard my talk, but I always start too with the history, right? The theory of global warming is older than the theory of continental drift. One of the first things that scientists asked themselves in the 18th century is, why is the Earth not as hot as the sun? And so this is a very, very old field of investigation. So I think that finding for yourself what makes you convinced then makes you a much more compelling speaker. That's why I tried to summarize those 5 things, right? That we know what's happening, we know it's us, we know what to do, we just got to do it.
Right. And I know one of our awardees tonight just found this out is who is the science teacher from Mount Diablo. His grandfather, Dr. Richard Jackson, because I see the note here, who was the public health officer for the state of California, teaches now at UCLA, has written books on this. I was so effective because he also conveyed it in storytelling. He talked about stories to convey the research and the data and how powerful that is. And obviously that legacy is handed down to his grandson, who's an awardee tonight. So I think one of the things I would suggest too is that it is important to talk about it in terms of what it means to you personally, to personalize the story, to personalize how the impacts of climate change are affecting your life. Research is great to present, and the scientists do a great job of that. Policymakers want to hear stories. Those stories move them in ways that are often more impactful than the research. So it's about appealing to a policymaker's heart.
Yeah, and John, I would add
to their brain.
I would add too that we have clear evidence that scientists have been talking about this for decades, and it wasn't enough.
Right.
It wasn't enough. President Carter suggested in 1979 that we get 20% of our electricity from renewable sources by the year 2000. And that would have been a great move if we had done it, but we didn't do it. We didn't listen to the scientists.
And so, Devin corrects me. Dr. Richard Jackson is my father. Okay, we're getting all the, we'll have you correct all that. You're related. That's the bottom line, right? So
we are. He's awesome.
He is awesome. And he lived in Kensington at one time, didn't he? Yes, we had him speak.
That is correct.
Right. So the value of a storytelling public health official was impactful. So I don't know, Tyler or Tina, you were going to take a few questions from chat to Dr. Gunther, or any comments? Did you want to pull that up?
Ed's going to do that, but I see one here from, speaking of Richard Jackson, I have heard many global heating talks, and I will tell you that Andy Gunther is remarkable and superb. He needs to be on President Biden's Office of Science and Tech Policy.
Hey, the nomination, yeah. Andy.
And I have to say that, I mean, I don't want to steer the conversation other than what we're talking about, but I do want to say, you know, most speakers ask for a speaker fee, and I donate to the organization they're speaking for. So thank you.
So is there anyone else want to? I don't see anything else in chat. I mean, we definitely have a full night, so we don't want to.
You forgot to say that people can, or we could just take a few hands if we, you know, we could have people raise their hand if you want to comment or ask a question or talk.
Yes, someone wants to raise their hand or put something in chat.
There is a raise hand function in Zoom itself,
right,
that you can use if anybody knows how to use that.
So we have one question in chat from Susan Boudreau saying, "What is the timeline until we have unsurvivable temperatures in the Midwest?"
Well, I can't tell you that exactly. I can tell you that when we project forward the temperatures, say into the middle of, you know, like towards the latter half of this century, the key uncertainty is what our emissions path is. The sooner we can turn down the emissions, the less hot it's going to get. But it's going to get very hot, and I'm not quite sure how one might define uninhabitable, but it's going to be very, very hot in the summer in the southern part of the United States. It will also be very hot in the summer in the Central Valley of California.
Sue's a science teacher, so a great question that a science teacher would ask. Elaine Schroff, please name the most tangible ways that we can influence climate change as a nation.
Well, we have to take some really bold steps. For example, it has to be illegal to sell an automobile that burns gasoline by a certain date pretty soon. It has to be illegal to generate electricity burning coal very, very soon. And we have to have these broad policies. We're not just going to consume our way out of this. I'm sure if we took a survey here, all of you probably have a much lower carbon footprint than the average person. But these kind of changes are required, and we need to provide the national and international leadership. People are going to have a very hard time making their own national decisions if our nation, which has the highest per capita emissions in the world, is not taking serious steps to reduce our emissions. And again, I just want to reemphasize that for me as a scientist, the problem is not technical. The problem is not, we don't have an engineering problem. We have a political problem. And we are not committed to making the change. Once we commit, once we just decide we have to do this, well, then we're just going to do it. And we'll do what it takes, just like we did in World War II.
And the governor, as you know, issued an executive order that hasn't been translated into law yet, but will hopefully soon be, that requires that all passenger vehicles sold in California starting in 2035 be zero emission electric. And that is totally possible. I served on the California Air Resources Board for 7 years, and one of the most best votes I thought I made were votes that, for example, require, starting in 2029, every new public transit bus in California needs to be zero emission, starting in 2029. And you know what? We faced opposition even from the transit agencies when we were considering that vote, but there was the political will on the board to pass it and say, we know we can reach that standard. We passed rules on trucks. So it is possible, and we need to stand up to the political opposition in order to make progress on this. And you need to support folks who will do that. We do have a raised hand. I'll pull it up from Patrick Gutierrez. Patrick?
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Typed it in. So I had heard, I have family up in Oregon, and I know they've had a heat wave this year. And where they've had, I guess, 10 days over 100 degrees. And I heard recently that Dallas, Texas had 0 days under 100, which is kind of strange. So do you see anything, again, is this just going to get much worse in the short term? And then hopefully we can take these drastic steps and things will change? Or are we just in for a long, bumpy, hot ride for a while?
Well, we are in for a pretty bumpy ride for a while because we've already committed by putting, we've wrapped this blanket around ourselves. We put these emissions up in the atmosphere, and we are not able to remove them fast enough to have any kind of short-term impact. And so they're going to be there, and that heat, which otherwise would have escaped to outer space, is absorbed by the greenhouse gases and pumped back down to the planet. So that's a commitment that we're going to have to deal with. Any given week, any given month, there's always going to be variability in our weather. But as we look at average weather over time, that's what climate is. And we are going to see, whether it was cool in Texas last month, I can promise you in the average temperature in 2029 in Texas is going to be hotter than the average temperature in 2019. And then the variability around that will be even more. As we saw this spring with that heat wave in the Pacific Northwest, which was an enormously unusual event.
And they're not getting much rain this year there either. They just started getting a little bit, my sister said, the last week drizzles, but I mean, they usually get a lot more rain by this time of the year.
Right, and there's, the La Nina, El Nino pattern, that still happens, whether or not there's climate change, that's still happening. And we're lucky here in